Get out of my house. Tonight, the words cut through my birthday celebration like a knife. My mother, Evelyn Whitaker, stood at the head of the dining table, her champagne glass raised not in toast but in dismissal. 18 candles flickered on the cake before me, while 20 guests fell silent, their forks frozen midair. I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. "What?" "You heard me, Thomas." Her voice was ice. "You're 18 now. A man. Men don't live off their mothers." My father, William, sat beside her, his eyes fixed on his plate. I waited for him to speak, to defend me, to remind her this was insane. He said nothing. "Mom, this is—" "Don't make a scene," she interrupted, her smile razor-sharp. "Your bags are already packed. Harold will drive you to town." The guests shifted uncomfortably. Some looked away. Others watched with barely concealed curiosity, eager for gossip to share at their next garden party. I looked around the table, at faces I'd known my whole life. Not one person spoke up. "Dad." I whispered. He finally met my eyes, and what I saw there broke something inside me. It wasn't anger or disappointment. It was fear. I followed Harold to the service entrance, my cheeks burning with humiliation. True to her word, my mother had packed my belongings. 2 suitcases and a backpack. Nothing more. The designer clothes she bought for appearances stayed behind. The laptop I'd received for graduation, gone. Even my father's watch, promised to me since childhood, had vanished. Harold, who'd driven me to school for years, couldn't meet my eyes as he loaded my bags into the sedan. "I'm sorry, Master Thomas," he muttered. "Did you know?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "She told the staff this morning. Made us promise not to warn you." The 40-minute drive into town was silent, except for the rain beginning to fall. Harold pulled up to a bus station, not a hotel or friend's house as I'd hoped. He handed me an envelope. "Your mother said this is all you'll get." Inside were $300 and a note in her perfect handwriting. "Learn what the real world costs." Where am I supposed to go? I asked. But Harold was already pulling away, leaving me standing in the rain with everything I own at my feet. I watched his taillights disappear, taking with them the last connection to the only life I'd known. The basement room I found cost $80 a week. It smelled like mildew and sat beneath a Chinese restaurant, so the scent of cooking oil seeped through the floorboards at all hours. Water stained the ceiling. The single window looked out at ankles passing on the sidewalk above. I took it anyway. I had no choice. The next morning, I walked through town looking for work. By noon, I'd applied at 12 places. By evening, I'd been rejected by all of them. "Sorry, kid," one manager said. "We need someone with experience." "I'm a fast learner, I promised." He shook his head. "Can't risk it." The pattern repeated for 3 days until finally, a construction foreman named Marcus hired me to haul debris. The pay was minimum wage, the work was brutal, and my soft hands blistered within hours. But it was something. Then the rumors started. I'd been working 2 weeks when Marcus pulled me aside. "Someone's been calling around about you," he said carefully, "saying you stole money from your family." My stomach dropped. "That's not true." "I believe you, kid, but my boss doesn't want trouble." He handed me my final check and an apology. After losing 3 more jobs to the same whispered rumors, I sat on a park bench counting my remaining money. $42. Rent was due in 3 days, and I hadn't eaten since yesterday. You're William Whitaker's boy. I looked up to find an older man studying me. He wore work clothes covered in sawdust, his hands calloused and scarred. "I don't use that name anymore," I said bitterly. "Smart." He sat down without asking. "I'm Franklin Pierce. I worked for your family years ago, before your mother fired half the staff to save money she then spent on a new Mercedes." I said nothing. "I run a carpentry shop. Need an apprentice who's willing to work hard and keep his mouth shut." He studied me. "You interested?" "Why would you help me?" Franklin's expression hardened. "Because I know exactly what your mother's capable of. And because your father once helped my daughter when she needed surgery we couldn't afford. I owe the Whitaker family, but I owe Evelyn nothing. When do I start? I asked. Tomorrow, 6 sharp. Don't be late. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like hope. Franklin's workshop became my sanctuary. He taught me to measure twice and cut once, to respect the wood, to take pride in craftsmanship. My hands, once soft from privilege, grew hard and capable. The work was honest, and Franklin paid fairly. "You've got a natural eye for this," he said one afternoon as I finished a cabinet joint. "Most people rush. You take your time. I like seeing something come together." I admitted, "Everything makes sense here. Do the work right. Get the result you want." "Unlike people," Franklin said knowingly. As months passed, I built a small reputation. Clients started requesting me specifically for detail work. I saved every dollar I could, moving from the basement to a small studio apartment above a bakery. The smell of fresh bread beat cooking oil any day. But Franklin grew quieter as time went on. One evening, he stayed late after I'd finished. "There's something you should know about your father," he began. "I don't want to hear it." I cut him off. "You need to," Franklin insisted. William wasn't weak. He was trapped. I didn't see Franklin again after that conversation. He called in sick for 3 days, which wasn't like him. On the 4th day, his daughter phoned. "Dad passed away last night," she said, her voice thick with tears. "Heart attack." He went peacefully. The funeral was small. I stood in the back, grateful for everything he'd taught me. As people filed out, his daughter pressed an envelope into my hands. "He wanted you to have this." Inside was a letter in Franklin's careful handwriting. "Thomas, your father loved you more than you know. He tried to protect you the only way he could. When the time comes, you'll understand. Stay strong. F." 2 weeks later, I saw the obituary in the newspaper while at a coffee shop. William Whitaker, prominent businessman, passed away at age 62. My hands shook as I read. The funeral had been 3 days ago. No one had told me. I wasn't mentioned in the obituary. According to the paper, William Whitaker was survived by his loving wife, Evelyn, and left no children. I'd been erased. The registered letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a courier who made me sign 3 times. Inside was a letterhead from Carrington and Associates, a law firm I'd never heard of, and a sealed envelope marked, to be opened only by Thomas Whitaker. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. "Thomas, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I couldn't be braver while I was alive. I'm sorry I let her control everything. But I protected you the only way I knew how. The family trust isn't what your mother thinks it is. She's managed it, yes, but she's never controlled it. According to the terms I set 20 years ago, management passes to our son on my death, but only when he chooses to claim it. You don't have to do anything. The choice is yours. But know this, everything I built for you. Love, Dad." Attached was a document so complex I could barely understand it. I called the number on the letterhead. "Mr. Whitaker." The lawyer said warmly, "We've been expecting your call." "I don't understand any of this." "Then let me explain." Attorney Marcus Carrington met me at a downtown cafe, spreading documents across the table between us. "Your father established this trust when you were born," he explained. "Your mother has been the trustee, managing the assets and making decisions. She believed she had full control." "And she doesn't?" I asked. "Correct. Your father structured it so that upon his death, you become the primary trustee. Your mother's role was always temporary, conditional on you being a minor. She either never read the fine print, or she assumed you'd never claim it." My mind reeled. What does this mean exactly? It means the Whitaker estate, the business holdings, the properties, all of it requires your signature for any major decision. Your mother can't sell assets, take loans, or make substantial changes without your approval as trustee. She doesn't know? Carrington smiled slightly. She's about to find out. The transition happens automatically upon the filing of these papers. You just need to decide when you want to file. I thought of 18-year-old me, standing in the rain. I thought of my father's silence at that table. "Not yet," I said slowly. "Let her think she's safe a little longer." 15 years passed before I drove back to my hometown. I'd built a successful carpentry business, saved carefully and invested wisely. I wasn't wealthy like the Whitakers, but I was comfortable and, more importantly, independent. The town had changed. New shops lined Main Street. The old movie theater had become a Starbucks. But the Whitaker estate remained, perched on the hill overlooking everything like a crown. I bought a modest house 3 blocks from the estate, then a small commercial property on Main Street. Nothing flashy, nothing that would draw attention. Through careful inquiries, I learned the Whitaker business was struggling. Several failed investments, declining revenues. My mother had grown more controlling as things worsened, driving away talented employees. One afternoon, I stopped at a cafe and noticed a young woman, maybe 25, arguing with someone on the phone. "Grandmother, I'm not coming to another one of your dinners just so you can parade me around like a trophy," she snapped before hanging up. "Rough day?" I asked sympathetically. She smiled tiredly. "Family drama. I'm Lydia, by the way." My heart stopped. "Thomas." I managed. Over coffee, Lydia complained about her grandmother's impossible standards and constant criticism. She had no idea who I was. My mother had erased me so thoroughly that even family members my own age didn't know I existed. "She's hosting another dinner party next week," Lydia sighed. "Showing off for investors, try and pretend everything's fine with the company. It's exhausting." An idea formed. That sounds difficult. The worst part is sitting through her stories. She loves talking about how she built this empire alone, how she never needed anyone. Lydia rolled her eyes, as if grandfather didn't do most of the actual work. "Maybe you should bring a friend," I suggested casually. "Someone to make it more bearable?" Lydia brightened. "Would you? I know we just met, but you seem normal. Plus, it would annoy her to have someone there she can't control." "I'd be happy to help," I said, meaning every word. The dinner was Saturday. I had 6 days to prepare. I called Carrington. "It's time to file the papers." "Are you sure?" he asked. "Completely." "Then I'll have everything ready for Saturday evening. This will be quite the family reunion." I smiled. "That's exactly what I'm counting on." Saturday evening, I dressed carefully. Not too formal, but respectable. Lydia picked me up at 7, chattering nervously about her grandmother's likely comments. "Just ignore her if she's rude," she advised. "She's rude to everyone." The Whitaker estate looked exactly as I remembered. Same marble foyer, same crystal chandelier, same cold, perfect elegance that had never felt like home. Evelyn stood in the dining room, holding court among a dozen guests. She'd aged, her hair now silver, her face lined, but her posture remained military straight. "Grandmother," Lydia called. "I brought a friend. This is Thomas." Evelyn's eyes swept over me dismissively. "How nice." "Lydia, do seat your friend somewhere appropriate." She didn't recognize me. Why would she? I'd been a boy. Now I was a man, weathered by work and time. Dinner proceeded with Evelyn dominating conversation, boasting about business deals and social connections. I said little, watching and waiting. Finally, over dessert, she turned to me. "Thomas, was it? What do you do?" "Carpentry," I said simply. Her lip curled. "How humble. Someone has to do real work." I replied mildly. The table went silent. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "Real work?" she repeated dangerously. I reached into my jacket and withdrew an envelope. "Speaking of work, Mrs. Whitaker, I believe these are for you." Evelyn took the envelope with irritation, expecting an invoice or business card. As she read, her face transformed from annoyance to confusion to fury. "This is absurd," she spat. "Some kind of joke?" "I assure you it's completely legitimate," said a voice from the doorway. Carrington entered, briefcase in hand. "Mrs. Whitaker, I'm Marcus Carrington. I've been administering the Whitaker Family Trust since your husband's death. These documents officially transfer primary trusteeship to Thomas William Whitaker, as specified in the original trust agreement." Thomas William. Evelyn's face went pale. She looked at me, really looked, for the first time. "Hello, Mother," I said quietly. The room erupted. Lydia gasped. Other relatives started talking at once. Evelyn gripped the table edge, knuckles white. "This is impossible," she breathed. "You have no claim." "Actually," Carrington interrupted smoothly, "the claim was established at birth and activated upon William Whitaker's death. The transition is automatic. It's already been filed with the court. As of this afternoon, Thomas has legal authority over all trust assets." Evelyn's carefully constructed world crumbled in real time. I watched emotions flash across her face. Shock, denial, rage, and finally, fear. The dinner party ended in chaos. Guests fled, eager to spread the news. Lydia sat frozen, trying to process that her grandmother had a son, one who'd been erased and exiled. News spread through town like wildfire. By Monday morning, my phone rang constantly with reporters, investors, and curious acquaintances. I ignored them all. The Whitaker Company stock dipped as uncertainty spread. Board members demanded meetings. Suppliers grew nervous. Through it all, I maintained silence, working in my shop, living my normal life. The contrast between my calm and the chaos swirling around the Whitaker name only amplified the story. Mystery Air Surfaces read one headline. "Whitaker Empire in Turmoil," declared another. I gave no interviews, made no statements. My silence spoke louder than words ever could. 3 days after the dinner, my phone rang from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. "Thomas." My mother's voice cracked slightly. "We need to talk. Please." I deleted the message. She called 6 more times that day. I deleted each one. Finally, she appeared at my workshop, her designer clothes looking out of place among sawdust and tools. "We need to fix this," she said without preamble. Evelyn stood in my workshop doorway like a queen visiting a peasant village, her disgust at the surroundings barely concealed. "There's nothing to fix," I said, continuing to sand a table leg. "Everything is exactly as Dad wanted it." "Your father didn't know what he wanted," she snapped. "I built that company." "You managed what he created." "I corrected. There's a difference." Her jaw clenched. "Thomas, be reasonable. You know nothing about running a business empire. You'll destroy everything." "Then teach me," I suggested, "or step aside and let me hire people who will. This is blackmail." "No," I said calmly, finally looking at her. "This is consequence." We stared at each other across 15 years of silence. "What do you want?" she finally asked. I pulled out a document I prepared. "The estate. You can continue living there, but you'll pay rent. Market rate. The mansion is a trust asset, after all." "Rent?" Her voice rose. "I will not pay rent in my own home." "It was never your home," I said quietly. "It was Dad's. Now it's mine. Those are the terms." She snatched the lease agreement, her hands shaking with rage. "You're doing this to humiliate me." "I'm doing this because it's fair." Within weeks, the whisper started. Evelyn Whitaker, forced to pay rent in her own mansion. The woman who'd thrown her son out with nothing now reduced to tenant status. Her social circle, always hungry for drama, devoured the story. Invitations dried up. Former friends grew distant. The humiliation she inflicted on me at 18 came back tenfold. I heard the gossip through Lydia, who'd started visiting my workshop regularly, trying to understand a family history she'd never known. "She's falling apart," Lydia reported one afternoon. "Barely leaves the house. Fired her housekeeper for gossip, but everyone's already talking anyway." "That must be hard for her," I said, without much sympathy. "Is it wrong that I'm not sorry?" Lydia asked. "She was awful to you, and honestly, she's been awful to everyone for years." Then came the story that changed public perception entirely. A local reporter discovered I'd been anonymously funding scholarships for trade school students, carpentry, plumbing, electrical work. The program was named the William Pierce Memorial Fund, honoring both my father and Franklin. The article painted me as the wrong son who turned bitterness into generosity, while my mother hoarded wealth and status. Public opinion shifted dramatically in my favor. While organizing trust documents, I found a leather journal wedged between old financial files. My father's handwriting filled every page. I stayed up all night reading. Thomas turned 5 today. Evelyn wanted a small party, but I insisted on inviting his whole class. She was furious, but seeing him laugh with friends was worth her anger. Evelyn's obsession with appearances is getting worse. She fired Harold's wife for wearing the wrong uniform. I rehired her in a different position. We can't keep doing this dance. I'm establishing the trust today. Carrington thinks I'm paranoid, but I know Evelyn. If something happens to me, she'll cut Thomas off completely. This way, he'll be protected. Thomas is 12. He asked why his mother is so cold to him. I didn't know what to say. The truth, that she resents him for not being the daughter she wanted, for looking like me instead of her, for existing as proof that I loved someone before her, would destroy him. The entries continued year after year, documenting my father's quiet acts of protection and his growing fear of Evelyn's cruelty. The final entry was dated 1 week before his death. If you're reading this, Thomas, I'm gone. I'm sorry I couldn't be stronger. I'm sorry I let fear silence me. But everything I built is yours. Use it better than I did. Be braver. Dad, I was meeting with the foundation board when Carrington called. Evelyn's filed a lawsuit, he said grimly, claiming your father lacked mental capacity when he created the trust. She's arguing the whole structure is invalid. My stomach sank. Can she win? It's risky for her. She'll have to prove William was incompetent, which means dragging his name through the mud. But if she wins, everything reverts to his estate, where she's the primary beneficiary. The trial began 3 months later. Evelyn hired expensive lawyers who painted my father as mentally unstable, claiming the trust proved he wasn't thinking clearly. I sat in the courtroom day after day, listening to them tear apart the man who'd loved me enough to protect me even in death. On the 4th day, Carrington called me to stand. Mr. Whitaker, he said formally, did your father ever seem mentally incompetent to you? Never, I said firmly. He was the smartest, most careful person I knew. And do you have evidence of his mental state around the time he created the trust? I do. I produced a journal, along with business correspondence showing my father's sharp mind and strategic thinking. Letter after letter demonstrated careful planning and clear reasoning. Then came the recordings. What recordings? Evelyn's lawyer demanded. Your client wasn't the only one who kept records, Carrington said smoothly. William Whitaker documented several conversations with his wife regarding his son's future. The first recording played in the silent courtroom. Evelyn's voice. The boy is soft. Too much like your side of the family. William's voice. He's 8 years old. Give him time. Evelyn. I'm not wasting resources raising someone who'll never be strong enough to lead. Send him to boarding school. William. Absolutely not. Thomas stays here where I can protect him. A second recording, dated month before my 18th birthday. Evelyn. When he turns 18, he's out. I'm not supporting dead weight. William. You can't just throw our son away. Evelyn. Watch me, and you'll stay silent about it, or I'll make both your lives miserable. The courtroom sat in stunned silence. The judge reviewed the evidence. Journals documenting years of careful thought, business records showing mental acuity, recordings proving William had sound reasons to protect his son. I find no evidence of mental incompetence, the judge ruled. The trust stands as written. Case dismissed. Evelyn's lawyers packed up quickly. She sat motionless, defeat written across her face. I'd won. The lawsuit's failure destroyed what remained of my mother's reputation. Her lawyer's strategy, attacking a dead man's mental capacity, had backfired spectacularly when the recordings revealed her cruelty. Former business partners distanced themselves. The company board, already unhappy with declining profits, voted to restructure leadership. Evelyn was offered a ceremonial position with no real power. She refused and resigned entirely. Mystery Air Surfaces read one headline. Whitaker Empire in turmoil, declared another. Stopped. I gave no interviews, made no statements. The woman who built her identity my silence spoke louder than words ever could. 3 days after the dinner, my phone rang from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail.
To save money
Thomas,
on her fixed income.
my mother's voice cracked slightly.
One's filled with
We need to
parties
talk.
and guests.
Please.
Sat silent.
I
She
deleted
asked
the
about you
message.
sometimes.
She called 6
Lydia
more
said
times that
carefully,
day.
Whether you're
I
happy.
deleted each
If you
one.
ever mention her,
Finally,
what do you
she
tell
appeared
her?
at my workshop,
The truth.
her designer
that you
clothes
built
looking out of
something
place
good.
among
That
sawdust
people
and
respect you.
tools.
But you don't
We
seem
need to
angry
fix this,
anymore.
she said
I
without
wasn't
preamble.
angry.
Evelyn
Anger
stood in my
required caring.
workshop doorway
And
like
I'd
a
moved
queen
beyond
visiting
that
a
into
peasant
something
village.
quieter.
Her
Not
disgust
quite
at the
forgiveness,
surroundings barely
but
concealed.
not hatred either.
There's nothing to
Just
fix,
distance.
I said,
I converted
continuing
the
to sand a
Whitaker
table
Trust into
leg.
Whitaker Foundation,
Everything is exactly as
dedicated to
Dad
funding
wanted it.
trade apprenticeships.
Your
for
father
young
didn't know
people
what he
from
wanted.
struggling backgrounds.
She snapped.
Every recipient
built that
received
company.
training, tools, and
You
mentorship.
managed what he created.
Everything I needed.
I
at 18.
corrected.
The
There's a
foundation
difference.
board included
Her jaw
Lydia,
clenched.
Carrington,
Thomas,
and several
be
respected
reasonable.
tradespeople from
You
the
know
community.
nothing about running
We
a business
funded programs
empire.
in carpentry,
You'll destroy
plumbing,
everything.
electrical work,
Then
welding,
teach me,
and more.
I
This
suggested,
is what my father
or
would
step
want.
aside
I
and
said
let
at
me
the
hire
launch
people
event,
who will.
not
This is
monuments or
blackmail.
buildings with his name on them.
No,
but
I
opportunities
said
for
calmly,
people to build better
finally
lives.
looking at her.
The
This is
first class of
consequence.
apprentices
We
included
stared at
20
each other
students.
across 15
Among
years
them
of
was
silence.
a teenage boy whose
What do you
mother had
want?
kicked him out.
She finally asked.
I saw myself
I
in his
pulled out a
eyes.
document I
That
prepared.
mixture of fear and
The estate.
determination.
You can
You're
continue
gonna be
living
okay.
there,
I
but
told
you'll
him,
pay
meaning
rent.
it. Work
Market
hard,
rate.
stay
The mansion
honest,
is a trust
and
asset.
don't let
After
bitterness
all,
poison what you build.
rent.
The
Her
program
voice
was named
rose.
the William
I will
Whitaker
not pay
and
rent in
Franklin
my own
Pierce
home.
Memorial Foundation.
It was never
I
your
commissioned
home.
a plaque
I said
for our
quietly.
workshop that read,
It was Dad's.
One man gave me life.
Now it's mine.
Another
Those
taught
are
me
the
to
terms.
live. Media coverage
She snatched the
was
lease agreement,
overwhelmingly positive.
her hands
The
shaking with
foundation
rage.
became known as
You're doing
the
this to
Whitaker
humiliate
Redemption.
me.
A family
I'm doing
name
this because it's
transformed
fair.
from representing cold
Within
wealth
weeks,
to genuine
the
community
whisper
support.
started.
Applications
Evelyn Whitaker,
poured in from young
forced to
people
pay
across
rent in
the
her
state.
own mansion.
We expanded the
The woman
program,
who'd thrown her son out
opening
with nothing
satellite
now
workshops in
reduced
3
to tenant
cities.
status.
Each one
Her
shared
social
the same
circle,
mission.
always
Give
hungry for
people the
drama,
tools and training to
devoured
build
the
their
story.
own futures.
Invitations dried
Reporters
up.
called it inspiring.
Former friends grew
A
distant.
redemption story
The
for
humiliation
ages.
she inflicted
Thomas
on me
Whitaker
at
has
18 came
transformed
back
his family's
tenfold.
legacy.
I heard the
Collins
gossip
wrote,
through Lydia,
from one of
who'd
privilege and
started
cruelty
visiting
to
my
one of genuine
workshop
opportunity
regularly,
and compassion.
trying to understand a
praise
family
felt
history
strange.
she'd never known.
I'd simply
She's falling
done
apart.
what I wish someone had done
Lydia
for me.
reported one afternoon, barely
Lydia
leaves the
appeared in my
house,
office with a proposal.
fired her housekeeper
I
for
want
gossip.
to work for the foundation.
But everyone's already
she said.
talking anyway.
Not as your niece
That must be
or
hard
Whitaker,
for her,
but as
I
someone
said,
who wants to help.
without much sympathy.
I've been volunteering.
Is
at
it
the
wrong that
workshops,
I'm not
and
sorry?
I love it.
Lydia
What
asked.
about your career in
She was
finance?
awful to you.
I
And
asked.
honestly,
I was doing
she's
it
been
because
awful to
grandmother
everyone for
expected
years.
it. This is
Then
what I
came
actually
the
care
story
about.
that changed public
She
perception
smiled.
entirely.
Turns out
A
carpentry
local
runs the
reporter
family.
discovered I'd been anonymously
I hired her
funding
as program
scholarships for
coordinator.
trade school
She
students.
threw herself into the
Carpentry,
work with
plumbing,
enthusiasm I
electrical
recognized.
work. The program
joy
was
of
named the
finally
William
doing
Pierce
something
Memorial
meaningful.
Fund,
The town
honoring
perception
both
of
my
Whitaker
father
name
and
shifted
Franklin.
entirely.
The article
We were
painted
no
me as the
longer the
wrong
family on the
son who
hill,
turned bitterness
hoarding
into
wealth.
generosity,
We were the
while my mother
foundation that
hoarded
gave
wealth
back.
and status.
It felt better
Public
than any
opinion
revenge
shifted
could have.
dramatically
5
in my
years
favor.
after the trial,
While organizing
I drove
trust
up to the
documents,
estate.
I
hadn't
found a
been
leather
there
journal wedged
since the
between
dinner
old
party that
financial
started
files.
everything.
My father's
The grounds
handwriting
looked
filled
shabby.
every page.
Gardens overgrown.
I stayed up all
Paint
night
peeling.
reading. Thomas
A fountain
turned
in the
5
circular
today.
driveway sat
Evelyn wanted a
empty
small
and cracked.
party,
I
but
knocked
I
on the
insisted
door.
on inviting his
After a
whole
long
class.
wait, my
She
mother
was
answered.
furious,
She'd
but seeing
aged
him laugh with
dramatically.
friends was worth
Her
her
hair
anger.
completely white
Evelyn's
now.
obsession with
Her posture
appearances
stooped.
is getting worse.
The expensive clothes
She
were
fired
gone,
Harold's wife
replaced
for
by a
wearing the
simple
wrong
house
uniform.
dress.
I
Thomas,
rehired
she
her
said
in a
quietly,
different position.
I was
We can't
expecting
keep doing
you.
this dance.
May I come
I'm
in?
establishing the
She
trust
led me
today.
to the study.
Carrington
The
thinks I'm
same room where
paranoid,
my father
but I
used to
know
work.
Evelyn.
Most of
If
the
something
furniture was
happens to
gone.
me,
Probably
she'll cut
sold.
Thomas off completely.
We sat in the 2
This way,
remaining chairs.
he'll be protected.
Silence
Thomas
stretched
is
between
12.
us.
He
The
asked why his
foundation
mother
is
is so
doing
cold
well.
to him.
I
I didn't know what to
finally,
say.
We've helped
The
over
truth
300 young people
That she resents
so
him for
far.
not being the daughter
I've
she
read
wanted,
about it.
for
She
looking like me
admitted.
instead of her,
You're doing good work.
for existing as proof
More
that I love
silence.
someone before her
Do you hate
would
me?
destroy
She
him.
asked suddenly.
The entries
Her voice
continued
small.
year after
I
year,
considered the question
documenting my
honestly.
father's quiet
No,
acts to
mother,
protection.
I finally
his growing
understand
fear of
you.
Evelyn's cruelty.
Understand
the
what?
final entry was
That
dated
you were
1 week
afraid
before his
of
death.
not being enough,
If you're reading
of
this,
being forgotten,
Thomas,
of
I'm
losing
gone.
control.
I'm sorry I couldn't be
paused.
stronger.
Fear makes
I'm
people
sorry
cruel.
I let fear silence
I was
me.
terrible to
But
you.
everything I built
she
is
whispered.
yours.
Yes.
Use it better
I
than I
agreed.
did.
You
Be
were.
braver.
We talked
Dad,
for hours that
I was
day.
meeting with the
Not about
foundation
apologies
board
or forgiveness,
when Carrington called.
but about truth.
Evelyn's filed a
She
lawsuit.
told me about her own
He said
childhood,
grimly. claiming
by
your
a
father
who
lacked mental
valued
capacity
sons over daughters,
when he created the trust.
how she built walls
She's
around
arguing the
herself.
whole structure is
Thinking strength
invalid.
meant never
My
showing
stomach
weakness.
sank.
Your
Can she
father
win?
was the only person who ever
It's
saw
risky
past
for her.
that.
She'll have
she
to
said.
prove William was
And I
incompetent,
resented him for it.
which means
for making
dragging
me
his
feel
name through the
vulnerable.
mud.
So you
But
took
if she
out on me.
wins,
I said,
everything reverts
you
to
were
his
so
estate,
much like him,
where she's the
kind,
primary beneficiary.
gentle. Everything
The
I'd
trial
been taught
began
was
3
weakness.
months later.
She looked
Evelyn
away.
hired expensive
I thought
lawyers
I
who
was
painted
making
my
you
father
stronger.
as mentally unstable.
You almost broke me instead.
Claiming the trust proved he
know,
wasn't thinking
she
clearly.
whispered.
I
I
sat
see
in the
that
courtroom
now.
day after day.
I left that evening
listening to
without
them tear
promises of
apart the man who'd
reconciliation
loved me
or
enough to protect me
forgiveness.
even in
Some
death.
wounds run
On
too
the 4th
deep
day,
for simple
Carrington
healing.
called me to
But
stand.
I left without anger.
Mr. Whitaker,
too.
he said
Understanding
formally,
isn't the same
did
as
your father
forgiveness,
ever seem
but
mentally
it's
incompetent to you?
Over the following
Never.
months,
I said
Evelyn's health
firmly.
deteriorated.
He was the
Carrington
smartest,
called
most
with
careful
update.
person I knew.
She'd fallen.
And do
been
you have
hospitalized,
evidence of his mental state
moved
around
to
the
a nursing
time he created the
facility.
trust?
I visited
I
occasionally.
do.
Bringing
I produced
photos
a
of
journal,
foundation students,
along with business
sharing their success
correspondence,
stories.
showing my father's
Your
sharp
father will be
mind and
proud,
strategic thinking.
she said during one
Letter
visit.
after
I
letter
hope so,
demonstrated
I
careful
replied.
planning
I'm
and clear
proud,
reasoning.
too, she
Then
added
came the
quietly.
recordings.
Even if I have
What
no
recordings?
right to be.
Evelyn's
call
lawyer
came at 3
demanded.
a.m.
Your
Mr.
client
Whitaker,
wasn't the only
this is
one who
Pinehurst
kept
Nursing
records.
Home.
Carrington
Your
said
mother's
smoothly.
condition has worsened
William Whitaker
significantly.
documented several
She's asking for
conversations
you.
with his wife
I drove
regarding
to the
his son's
darkness to find
future.
Evelyn in a
The
sterile
first
room.
recording played in the
Oxygen
silent
tubes running to her
courtroom.
nose.
Evelyn's voice.
Monitors beeping
The
softly.
boy is soft.
She looked
Too
impossibly
much like your
frail.
side of the family.
Thomas.
William's
She breathed when
voice.
she saw me.
He's 8 years
I took
old.
her hand.
Give him
It
time.
felt like paper and bone.
Evelyn.
I need to
I'm
tell
not
you
wasting
something,
resources
she whispered,
raising someone who will
before
never
it's
be
too
strong
late.
enough to lead.
You don't
Send
have
him
to.
to boarding school.
I do.
William.
She coughed
Absolutely
weakly.
not.
I envy
Thomas
your
stays
father's
here
love
where I
for
can
you.
protect him.
He looked at you
The
the
second
way he used to
recording,
look at me.
dated month before my
Before I became
18th
someone
birthday.
hard and bitter.
Evelyn.
I wanted to punish you
When he
both
turns
for that.
18, he's out.
Mom,
I'm not
let
supporting
me
dead
finish.
weight.
Her
William,
grip tightened
You can't just
slightly.
throw our son away.
I threw you out because
Evelyn,
I couldn't stand
watch
seeing
me,
what I'd lost
and you'll
reflected
stay
in your
silent
eyes.
about it,
You
or I'll
reminded
make
me of
both your
everything
lives
I'd
miserable.
chosen to destroy
The
myself.
courtroom sat in stunned
Tears
silence.
rolled down her
The
weathered
judge
cheeks.
reviewed the evidence.
I'm sorry, Thomas.
Journals documenting
I'm so
years
sorry.
of careful thought.
We sat
Business
in
records
silence,
showing
her
mental
hand in
acuity.
mine. As
Recordings
monitors
proving
beat the
William had
machine
sound
hum.
reasons to protect
The
his
next
son.
day,
I
she
find
signed
no
her will.
evidence of mental
What
incompetence.
little remained of her
The judge
personal
ruled.
assets would go
The
to
trust
the
stands as
foundation.
written.
She
Case
died 3
dismissed.
days later.
Evelyn's
peacefully in her
lawyers
sleep.
packed up
The
quickly.
funeral was small.
She sat motionless.
Lydia and I stood by the
defeat
grave
written
as they
across her
lowered the
face.
casket next to my
I'd
father's.
won. The
A handful
lawsuit's
of people
failure
from her past
destroyed
attended,
what remained of
more
my
out of
mother's
curiosity
reputation.
than grief.
Her lawyer's
After
strategy,
everyone left,
attacking
I
a
stayed,
dead man's mental
standing between
capacity,
my parents' graves.
had backfired
Lydia found me
spectacularly
there
when the
an hour
recordings
later.
revealed her
Are you
cruelty.
okay? She asked.
Former business
I don't
partners
know.
distanced
I
themselves.
admitted.
The
She was
company
terrible
board,
to me.
already
But in the
unhappy with
end,
declining
She was
profits,
still my mother.
voted to restructure
It's
leadership.
okay to feel complicated
Evelyn was
things.
offered a ceremonial
Lydia said
position
gently.
with
Later,
no real power.
back at my house,
She
I
refused and
opened the
resigned
envelope
entirely.
the lawyer had given me. Inside was a letter in my mother's shaking handwriting. Thomas, you carried the Whitaker name higher than I ever could, not through wealth or status, but through actual goodness. Your father saw that potential in you from the beginning. I was too blind and too proud to see it until far too late. Thank you for understanding what I couldn't explain. Thank you for not letting my cruelty make you cruel in return. I spent my life building walls. You spent yours building bridges. You were always the stronger one. Mom, I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my father's journal. Standing by their grave that afternoon, watching the sunset over the town below, I finally understood the full arc of my journey. She took everything from me once, I said quietly to Lydia, and gave it all back without knowing it. The woman who'd thrown me into the world with nothing had inadvertently given me everything that mattered: resilience, empathy, purpose, and the understanding that real strength isn't about control or status. It's about building something meaningful from whatever materials you're given, even if those materials are pain and abandonment and loss. The Whitaker Foundation continued to grow. Hundreds of young people learned trades, built careers, and created better lives. The family name became synonymous with opportunity rather than privilege. And somewhere, I like to think my father was proud, not of wealth or power or revenge, but what I had built from the ashes of the life his wife had tried to burn down. Something real, something lasting, something good.